Thank you guys for joining me back here on the show. To our third segment, we're now going to the city of Pittsburgh. And the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette basically, published a very insightful article on the Steelers' offensive struggles. I believe it was published yesterday. And really the main cause of the sudden, nosedive that this team took towards the end of the season appears to be because of the disagreements between offensive coordinator Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson, right? The veteran quarterback that came in for his first year this past season, about the offensive philosophy that was, going on there in Pittsburgh. With new offensive coordinator coming in, Russell Wilson also coming in, there was a clash there. Allegedly, according to Jerry Dulac, who wrote this article on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And really, if you guys aren't aware of how bad it got for the Steelers, they couldn't score more than 17 points in any of their final 5 games. It's the first time since Chuck Noll's rookie season that the Steelers failed to score 17 points or more in any stretch there, right? So that's historically bad. That's way before I was even born, obviously, and right, it's very unprecedented for anything like that to happen. So according to the author of this story, Jerry Dulac, he wrote, I should say, multiple sources have told the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, in quotations, the offense lacked imagination and that the audibles and route adjustments Wilson was making at the line of scrimmage were creating a conflict with offensive coordinator Arthur Smith, Dulac wrote. And he also stated that the decline, the serious, disagreement, and I guess to a sense boiling point over, the tipping point of this entire situation began after the Steelers defeated the Bengals 44-38, right? And Russell threw for like 400 yards or something like that and like 3 touchdowns in that game, and was one of the best offensive performances for the Steelers in a long time, right? I think it was since 2018 that they not scored that many points. And after that game, Dulac explained that after that, Arthur Smith didn't want Russ changing his calls and deviating from the plan as much as he did, according to these sources, in that game, right? So that's why now you're starting to hear about this friction, you're starting to hear about them butting heads, and now there's even more questions about whether or not Russell Wilson will return to Pittsburgh at all, right? If him and Arthur Smith don't see eye to eye, then it feels like there's no reason why he should come back, because if they don't see eye to eye, then a lot of people are speculating that, it's not going to work, it's not a good match, so why would they bring him back if there's been these problems? So that's why, you say that in one sense, and that's why immediately people go to the other quarterback, right, Justin Fields, and they believe that Fields is the preferred option by a good amount of the coaching staff because, he didn't do what Russ was doing, right? He stuck to the game plan, and he followed it according to how Arthur Smith was doing it. And he's obviously younger, more athletic, and cheaper probably. So those reasons are the obvious ones, but also this one, that he didn't do any of these, audibles or deviating from the plan, at least not as much as Russell Wilson. So that's why it feels like the scale is tipping more in favor of Justin Fields. And with all of that information now out there in front of us, and you guys can read more into it if you go read the article, right? It was pretty interesting to read everything that was in there written out. And already, like, I do agree on one stance that it makes it really tough for Russell Wilson now to return after you hear of this stuff. And there was already rumors before, and I didn't really pay too much attention to them, but now seeing this article being written and the multiple sources writing or providing context around it and stuff like that, and you kind of put all the pieces together, I don't really see how Russ can come back after something like that. And I mean, I would want Justin Fields to come back anyway. That was my preference at the beginning of everything. If I had to choose, I would have stuck with Justin Fields just because it feels like that wasn't really explored as much, right? I feel like with Russ, you kind of know what you're going to get already, but with Justin, there's still that aspect of not really knowing because he's still like 26 years old. So I would have brought back Justin anyway, but to Russell Wilson's defense, it is hard to ignore that winning streak, right? When Mike Tomlin made the executive decision to make that change and maybe go against what a lot of people were thinking that he should do, it paid off. You know, they went on that great winning streak. Everybody was riding high. The momentum was high. Everything surrounding the Steelers was positive. Sunshine and roses. Everybody thought that this team was going to make it to the conference championship at that point, right? So that part is hard to ignore, to be quite honest, right, if you're trying to be fair to Russell Wilson. But what I think is a bigger issue here is not whether or not, you know, Russ is going to come back or not because of this. I kind of found it hard anyway, because you ran it back already last year. What more do you need to see from both of them, right? So, you know, Art Rooney II, their owner and president, also said that he would like to sign one of them, not both of them. So that's why I was already kind of leaning towards both of them not coming back. But what I think is the bigger issue here is from Arthur Smith, right? An issue that I kind of have here with Arthur Smith is wanting to operate the offense your way is one thing, right? But after, you know, this team's best game, I would say, and still being kind of like upset about the deviation of the plan and wanting it to be run your way after your best game of the season. I understand you work all week on that plan, so you want to put it into action, right? Not just do all that work for nothing, right? That would be frustrating, and I would understand that, right? If you got this game plan that you're working on it all week and then they're just changing it at the moment, then it becomes frustrating, right? If you're Arthur Smith. But I don't know, someone's got to tell Arthur Smith or Mike Tomlin that this run-first offense that they want to try and implement, that they've been trying to implement, is not working how they think it is, at least, right? Because they're not running the ball like the Lions. They're not running the ball like the Eagles are or something like that, right? It's one thing if Russell Wilson comes in there and your run game is like a top 5 run game and at the line of scrimmage he's changing it to a pass play, that is where I would say, you know what, like Russ, like that's not right. This team's predicated on the run game. They're doing very well with it. There's no need to change it, right? Like you got to chill. But like this run game was awful. Again, like it wasn't very good at all. And it's one thing if it's great and you're changing it, but if it's as bad as it's been, like I don't understand what the problem was with changing it. Especially if you put up 44 points, then I don't really see what's the huge problem of someone coming in here trying to implement their ideas, trying to create some sort of change, and having it work out like they did, at least in this game, for you to go up to him afterwards and say, you know what, like I know like this worked or whatever, but I don't really appreciate you changing the plans after one of the best games. You would think that would probably have Arthur Smith maybe second guessing something about the offensive plan, or maybe that they should implement the passing game a lot more, not just run zone reads on first downs and try to run it to the outside again then the very next play, and then you're stuck in 3rd and 7 more often than not. You try to throw a pass play to the outsides and everybody knows it's coming, and then you're walking off the field each and every time. If you watched the Steelers game, you saw that exact same movie almost quite literally every single start to the game, right? They didn't have a opening drive touchdown because, lo and behold, everybody knew what they were going to do, right? It was predictable, right? And there was worse. It was, you know, watching this run game, honestly, was worse than watching, not worse than watching a lot of things, right? I probably would have rather watched paint dry than watch this team's run game. You know, to continue to be a problem and just be as predictable and bland and old school as this running game has been for a large part now, for a long time now. I mean, Julian Edelman had a quote to say about the Steelers way and, you know, the same sort of stuff they were running. He says that everybody can see it and everybody knows what they're trying to do, right? And Ben Roethlisberger kind of reacted to that and said that there's some element of truth in there. And I think that's also, like more of the problem, that the Steelers are so locked in to doing things this sort of way and trying to do things the Steeler way, which is great. I love the message and I love that things used to work like that. But after so much time of not seeing things work out, you'd hope that there'd be some sort of change and not just trying to run the ball the first two plays, thinking that it's going to work when it's clearly not, and then just continuing to be locked in on that, right? And then when someone comes in to try and change it, you sort of push them away and tell them to stop, right? Then you start thinking of other things, right? Like, we saw the best version of Calvin Austin this year, right? And I think a lot of that probably had to do with Russell Wilson coming in and making audibles and making some of these changes, right? Because that's where you saw the best out of Calvin Austin. They had a good connection. And I wonder if Russ had not come in and done that, would we have even had the kind of season with Calvin Austin out there making all those plays, scoring all those, big explosive play touchdowns? Would we have even seen that at all if Russ didn't try to push the envelope a little bit outside the comfort zone? That could be a huge miss there, right? That could have been a huge missed opportunity for this Steelers offense that now knows has a great playmaker in Calvin Austin. And it also makes you kind of wonder about Justin Fields. Was he going along because he felt like it was the right thing to do, or was he just forced to do it, right? That, all the mistakes that you probably saw, all the rough plays from Justin, was it a result of the plays and the offensive style that the Steelers wanted to run, or was it actually on him and his abilities, right? I think when things get into question like they are now with this offensive style clashing with Russell Wilson, his philosophy to throw the ball a little bit more, you start to question things like that, right? When you saw Justin Fields struggle, was that a result of the scheme, trying to forcefully operate this scheme when it might not work, or was it down to him and his own mistakes as a player, right? I don't think you have a clear answer there, and that's a problem, right? Because you still don't really have a clear answer with this Steelers team. And their biggest problem for me over the last few years has been, just being, I feel like they're too scared to kind of diverge too far from what they know is comfortable, right? Everybody says it. I'm getting so sick of hearing that the Steelers, they're not playing the Steeler way, or like this isn't Steelers football, and everybody comes on and says, we just got to run the ball more. We got to run the ball more efficiently, which is true, but to that aspect, like, it can't be the exact same thing. You got to try something differently at least, because everybody feels like they know what's coming on the offensive side of the ball. And it's a shame because you always have a head coach preaching, one of his many Tomlinisms is you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And we haven't seen that, right? They're very much content with doing what's comfortable for them on the offensive side of the ball, at least. They're not very much trying to change that, it feels like, right? Every season, it's almost the same thing, at least for the last, 7-8 years, right? It feels like it's been the same thing. So you say something, but you're not really showing it through your actions. There's reportedly not going to be a lot of changes this year either. So I don't know what more you need to really see, quite honestly, right? If the same movie keeps being played, you'd hope you'd try to change something if you really want to see change, right? If they're all right with being comfortable and being all right with making the playoffs and then losing in the first round, then we're going to see more of it. But if they keep saying that they want to see change, we got to see some action. And until that happens, unfortunately, it's probably going to be more of the same, which again is a shame because, Mike Tomlin gets criticized a lot and I think he's a good coach, but without the change and just empty promises, I would say, nothing's really going to change. So that's where I kind of thought of, that's kind of where I went with this thought of this clashing of offensive philosophies, right? Very interesting stuff going down there in Pittsburgh, to say the least. But we will move on from that topic now and look at the New York Giants in the next segment. After the break, we're going to continue with our series of looking at places for improvement for each team across the NFL. Now we got to stop in New York and talk about the Giants and where they need to see most of their improvement in 2025.